Imagine your top employee hands in their resignation today, like just right out of the blue.
Oh man, the absolute worst nightmare for any manager.
Right. So they pack up their desk, they turn in their company laptop, they hand over the key card, and your traditional balance sheet looks at that event and basically says, well, you haven't lost a single asset.
Yeah, because the physical stuff is all there.
Exactly. The laptops are accounted for, the office furniture sitting right there, the inventory is safe in the warehouse. But in reality, that employee is walking out the door with like the unwritten five-step client onboarding process in their head.
The exact process that probably generates, what, 80% of your revenue?
Literally. So your balance sheet says you're totally fine, but reality says you just lost your most valuable asset. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we have a really clear mission. We are completely redefining what wealth and assets actually look like in the modern economy.
It's a huge topic. I mean, it really requires a total paradigm shift. We're moving from this industrial age definition of value, which is basically just weighing the physical stuff you can touch and count, to an information age definition.
Where the things you can't physically see are the things that dictate your market value.
Yeah, exactly. And we're looking at how this shift is just accelerating dramatically right now.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, why missing it means you are leaving an immense amount of enterprise value completely unprotected.
Yeah, so to guide us through this, we're digging into some really fascinating source material today. We are looking at excerpts that detail an upcoming featured appearance by Kary Oberbrunner. And this is at the WealthAbility 2026 Annual Tax Strategy Conference.
Which is such an interesting venue for this.
I know, right? I mean, the phrase intellectual property mixed with a tax strategy conference sounds like kind of dry legal jargon reserved for patent attorneys sitting in dusty law libraries.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a cure for insomnia at first glance.
It really does.
Yeah.
But we're going to look past that surface reputation today, because what this source material reveals is that intellectual property is actually the ultimate modern wealth engine. Like, it's the hidden driver of enterprise value and the absolute secret advantage for basically anyone creating anything in the world today.
And the central premise that Oberbrunner brings to this discussion, it really exposes a massive blind spot, not just for organizations, but for individual professionals too.
Well, because people are so incredibly disciplined about tracking their physical and financial assets, right?
Right. They know their daily bank balances. They have this like meticulous depreciation schedule for the company vehicles. They even count the office supplies.
But they completely ignore their true economic drivers, simply because those assets never appear on a standard balance sheet.
Yeah. So let's talk about what those hidden assets actually are, because the text gives us a very specific list.
It does. We are talking about proprietary frameworks, systems, internal content, custom software, research, and institutional knowledge.
The real engines of a business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the text points out they often remain totally unidentified, unprotected, and underleveraged. I mean, it's kind of like knowing exactly how much pocket change is in your wallet, but being completely oblivious to a winning lottery ticket stuffed in that exact same pocket.
That is a perfect analogy. And let's use the concept of business valuation to show exactly how this plays out in the real world. Think about trying to value a modern electric car by just weighing its scrap metal.
Okay, so just the physical parts.
Right. The
Okay.
aluminum, the glass, the rubber on the tires. If you did that, you'd look at it and say, well, this is worth maybe a few $1,000s.
Because you're completely ignoring the millions of lines of proprietary self-driving software code.
Exactly. The code that actually makes the car valuable, that software is totally invisible. You can't weigh it on a scale. But it is the entire reason the car is worth a massive premium.
Okay, so let's apply that to a standard business for the listener.
Yeah.
Say you have two seemingly identical consulting firms up for sale. Both have the exact same revenue, the same number of employees, the same nice office space.
Okay, two identical firms.
Yeah, but consulting firm A just relies on the sheer talent of its founders. They come in, they work hard, they figure things out on the fly. If you buy firm A and those founders leave, you are basically buying empty desks.
Which means, as an investor, you will offer a very low valuation multiplier for firm A because your risk is just incredibly high. The value is entirely tied up in human beings who can walk out the door at any moment.
Right. Now look at firm B. Firm B has spent 5 years testing, refining, and documenting this unique proprietary 12-step framework for, say, turning around failing teams.
They've actually systemized it.
Yeah, they've branded it, they have documented the exact workflow, the specific diagnostic questions they ask, the exact order of operations, everything.
So if you buy firm B, you aren't just buying the current revenue, you are buying the blueprint. The founders can literally retire to a beach somewhere, and the business continues to print money because the system is an asset completely independent of the people running it.
And that is the core of enterprise value. Oberbrunner makes the point that this hidden intellectual property is exactly what differentiates a company from its competitors.
It increases the valuation, it attracts serious investment, and it drives long-term growth. Because an investor doesn't want your computers, They want the unique, proven way you solve a problem.
But because this documented framework doesn't look like cash in a bank account, most founders never officially identify it as an asset, which brings up a pretty massive friction point for me based on this source material.
Okay, what's the friction point?
Well, companies have always had internal systems, right? Like bakeries have always had secret recipes. If these invisible assets have always existed, why is there suddenly this urgent flashing red light on them right now?
That's a great question.
I mean, why is this suddenly the main stage topic at a 2026 Wealth Conference?
The urgent catalyst driving this entire conversation, the thing that changes everything, is artificial intelligence. The landscape of idea creation has been fundamentally, permanently altered.
Yeah, the text actually highlights a best-selling book, Oberbrunner, co-authored with intellectual property attorney Kary Oberbrunner from Wigan and Dina LLP. The book is called You Are an IP Company.
Right, and their core observation is that AI is violently accelerating the creation and distribution of ideas.
It's democratizing creation at a scale we've literally never seen before.
It fundamentally changes the basic supply and demand mechanics of content and ideas.
Okay, hold on. I'm struggling with this AI argument a bit. I really have to push back here.
Go for it.
If AI makes it absolutely effortless for anyone to just churn out 1,000 different marketing strategies in 10 seconds, to write endless articles, generate infinite business plans, doesn't human-made proprietary knowledge become, well, significantly less valuable?
You'd think so, right?
Yeah. I mean, if my human design framework is just one drop in an ocean of AI-generated content, doesn't the sheer volume of noise make my IP virtually worthless?
You actually have to invert your thinking on this, because the exact opposite happens in a hypersaturated market.
Really? How so?
Well, when AI creates this ocean of infinite, unchecked noise, the verified original framework like the human design system that has actually been tested and proven to cut through that noise, that becomes exponentially more valuable.
Oh, because the AI stuff is just guessing?
Exactly. AI is essentially a prediction engine. It generates what sounds plausible based on historical data. It does not generate what is verified to work for your highly specific, real-world business problem today.
Okay, so AI can give me 1,000 variations of a sales pitch, but it can't tell me which one will actually convince a procurement officer at a hospital to sign a contract in real life.
It cannot. The prompt you use to get a highly specific result, the unique internal process you use to feed data into the AI, the proprietary framework you use to evaluate and refine the AI's output before delivering it to a client, that is your intellectual property.
Ah, I see.
Protecting that original framework is a vital competitive advantage. We are moving way past the era where IP was merely a defensive legal issue, like trying to stop a competitor from copying your company logo.
Right. It's about owning the verified blueprint in a world where everyone else is just relying on automated guesswork.
Exactly.
I totally see the distinction now. AI is the engine, but the proprietary system is the navigation software. And without the navigation, you're just driving incredibly fast in a totally random direction.
That's a great way to put it. And that ties perfectly into one of the boldest quotes from Oberbrunner in the source material. He says, "Every company is an IP company, whether they realize it or not."
That's a huge statement. He's really challenging the listener to view their own daily work through this lens.
Yeah, think about the listener tuning into this on their commute right now. Maybe you built a complex spreadsheet last week that automates a reporting process, and it saves your department 3 hours every single day.
Right now, your boss just thinks you are a highly efficient worker.
Right, but through the lens of this source material, you just minted an intellectual property asset. You created a system. You are operating as an IP company within your larger organization.
Every company's an IP company. It really shifts your entire worldview. But identifying that you have a valuable system is only step one. And step two feels like a pretty massive cliff to climb.
Oh, the protection side of things.
Yeah, because if I have this killer onboarding framework or a highly optimized AI prompting system, what good is it if a competitor can just screenshot it? Like, how do you actually prove You own an invisible asset in a digital world where copy-pasting takes a fraction of a second.
That is the exact bottleneck that has historically kept small businesses and independent creators from leveraging their IP. Establishing ownership traditionally required immense amounts of time.
And money. Expensive attorneys navigating a super slow bureaucratic patent or copyright office.
Yeah, in a digital world that moves at the speed of light, that analog process is just fundamentally broken. You need a technological leap to secure digital assets at the actual speed they are created.
Which brings us to the technological solution presented in the text. And Oberbrunner isn't just an author theorizing about this stuff. He is actually the founder and CEO of a platform called Instant IP.
Right.
The source details how this platform helps creators, entrepreneurs, innovators, and organizations establish verifiable records of intellectual property ownership. And they do this using blockchain-backed documentation, timestamping, and evidence preservation.
The application of blockchain technology here is the critical mechanism. It solves the speed and verification problems simultaneously.
You know, when I first read this part of the text, it immediately made me think of the old poor man's copyright.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that.
Yeah.
Before the internet, if you wrote a screenplay or developed a unique business proposal and you wanted to prove you had the idea first, you would put the physical document in an envelope and just mail it to yourself.
Right, and the Postal Service would stamp the date across the seal and you would just never open it.
Exactly. If someone ever stole your idea, you can walk into a courtroom, hold up the sealed envelope and be like, look, I have a federally postmarked date proving I possess this document on March 4th, 1998.
It was a very practical analog act to establish a timeline of possession. And what Instant IP is doing is taking that poor man's copyright concept and upgrading it, making it cryptographically secure, mathematically undeniable, and functioning on a global scale.
But wait, I have a technical question here. If I put my secret bakery recipe or my proprietary consulting framework on a public blockchain, isn't it public? Like, doesn't that defeat the entire purpose of keeping it proprietary?
That is probably the most common misconception about how this technology is applied to intellectual property. You are not uploading the actual recipe or the text of the framework to a public ledger for everyone to read.
Okay, so what goes on the blockchain then?
You are using a process called cryptographic hashing. When you run a digital document through a hashing algorithm, it spits out a unique fixed-length string of letters and numbers, basically a digital fingerprint.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And if you change even one comma in your document, the entire fingerprint changes completely.
So the blockchain isn't storing the document. It's just storing the fingerprint of the document.
You store the fingerprint and the exact timestamp on the blockchain. It functions like a one-way mirror. No one can look at the fingerprint and reverse engineer your secret recipe.
But if a competitor steals your recipe down the line, you can take your original document, run it through the algorithm, and prove that it generates the exact fingerprint that you logged on the blockchain 2 years ago.
Exactly. It creates an immutable, permanent record. It mathematically proves this piece of intellectual property existed in this exact form at this exact millisecond and that it belongs to you.
Wow. It really is the ultimate sealed envelope. It can't be tampered with, it can't be backdated, and it is verified by a decentralized network rather than relying on a really slow government bureaucracy.
And returning to the concept of enterprise value, this technology completely unlocks the market for intangible assets. Because as a business owner, you cannot leverage an asset if you cannot definitively prove you own it.
That makes sense.
You can't sell a proprietary software system, you can't confidently license a unique training curriculum to other companies, and you certainly cannot attract serious venture capital if your only proof of ownership is a Word document on your laptop that says, created in 2023.
Yeah, a sophisticated investor is just going to laugh you out of the room. They want proof of origin and proof of ownership. They need to know the asset they actually buying is secured.
This approach takes something that has traditionally been abstract and legally murky and turns it into a tangible, verifiable record of ownership. It makes the invisible visible to the market. And once an asset is visible and verifiable, it can be assigned a financial value.
So we've gone from uncovering the hidden value of internal systems to understanding why AI makes human-tested frameworks exponentially more valuable, to figuring out how to mathematically lock down our ownership using cryptographic hashing.
Which is a huge journey on its own.
It is. But that naturally leads to the ultimate goal of business, right? Building and keeping wealth. Which brings this entire conversation full circle to exactly where Oberbrunner is actually presenting these ideas.
Yeah, the setting of the source material is deeply revealing. It tells you exactly who needs to understand this information right now.
The source material centers around his upcoming session at the WealthAbility 2026 Annual Tax Strategy Conference. And specifically, the session is a live interview between Oberbrunner and Tom Wheelwright.
Who is a massive name in this space.
Huge. For context for the listener, Tom Wheelwright is a heavyweight in the financial literacy space. He's a CPA, he's the founder of WealthAbility, the author of the widely read book Tax-Free Wealth, and he has served as a longtime tax advisor to Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
So you are looking at a stage shared by a tech founder specializing in IP and a CPA specializing in advanced tax mitigation.
And that is what initially surprised me so much, because when I think of a tax strategy conference, I think of the ultimate defense.
Right, saving money.
Exactly. I think of deductions, depreciation, finding legal ways to lower your tax burden. It's about protecting the money you have already made. It's a very defensive posture. So bringing in a tech founder who talks about intellectual property, AI, and blockchain feels like a total pivot to offense.
It does.
It's about creating new wealth, driving new valuations, creating assets basically out of thin air. It just felt like an unexpected pairing to have offense and defense sharing the keynote.
It might seem unexpected on the surface, but it is actually the ultimate synergy of modern wealth building. The text provides a quote from Oberbrunner that perfectly bridges this gap. He says, tax strategy helps businesses keep more of what they earn. Intellectual property helps businesses create more value in the first place.
I love that. That perfectly articulates the relationship, defense and offense working together.
But it goes much deeper than just two separate concepts sitting side by side. Because your audience is financially literate, we need to look at the actual mechanisms of how creating verifiable IP allows for advanced tax strategies.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics.
When you take an invisible process and use a platform like Instant IP to create a verifiable legal asset, you open up a whole new world of financial optimization.
How exactly does turning a framework into an official asset change the tax math?
Well, think about the tax code. The tax code is designed to incentivize specific behaviors, particularly innovation and business growth. If you are just a consultant offering advice, you're generating ordinary income, which is taxed at the highest rates.
Right.
But if you are developing proprietary software or formalizing a unique methodology, you are engaging in research and development. In many jurisdictions, the resources you pour into creating that intellectual property can actually qualify for R&D tax credits, which directly reduce your tax liability.
Oh, wow. So you are actively rewarded by the tax code for formalizing your IP.
Furthermore, once that intellectual property is established as a formal asset with a clear valuation, it changes how wealth is structured entirely. Intangible assets can sometimes be amortized over time, allowing a business to deduct the costs of that asset against their revenue.
That's huge.
Or, from a structuring standpoint, a company might choose to hold their highly valuable intellectual property in a completely separate legal entity. Maybe one located in a more favorable tax jurisdiction, and then license that IP back to their main operating company.
Okay, wait, let me make sure I'm following. So the operating company pays a licensing fee to use the IP, which reduces the taxable income of the operating company, while the wealth builds up in the IP holding company under a much better tax structure.
That is exactly the kind of advanced tax strategy Tom Wheelwright focuses on. But you cannot execute any of those advanced tax strategies, the R&D credits, the amortization, the IP licensing structures, if you haven't first clearly identified, documented, and proven ownership of the intellectual property.
Ah, I see.
You can have the greatest tax defense in the world, with every single deduction perfectly optimized, but if you aren't actively building highly defensible enterprise value, if you aren't creating assets, your growth is strictly capped. You are only optimizing a very limited pie.
By combining IP creation with tax strategy, you are essentially baking a massive new pie and making sure the government doesn't take half of it.
Exactly.
It's a complete closed-loop system for the modern economy. You create the asset through your unique systems, you secure the asset using a blockchain vault, that verifiable asset drives up your business valuation exponentially, and then you use advanced tax strategy to protect that newly generated wealth.
And as the source material notes, demand for expertise at this very specific intersection of AI, intellectual property, and tax strategy is rising rapidly. This is the modern formula for organizations that want to thrive, rather than just survive, in an AI-dominated landscape.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We have covered a pretty profound shift in how value is created today. We started by tearing up the traditional balance sheet.
Huh.
We moved away from just counting the laptops and office chairs to uncovering the massive hidden value of intellectual property, the systems, the frameworks, the specific ways you solve problems.
The real asset.
Yeah. We looked at how AI is completely changing the game, not by replacing your ideas, but by flooding the market with noise, making your verified, human-tested systems more valuable than ever before. We explored how cryptographic hashing and blockchain act as the modern digital vault to mathematically lock down your ownership.
Yeah.
And finally, we saw how marrying that IP creation with top-tier tax strategy is how serious generational wealth is built and protected today.
And the critical takeaway is that this is not just high-level theory for massive multinational corporations or big tech conglomerates. The core message here is deeply personal to every listener.
Very true.
Whether you are a solo entrepreneur scaling your first business, a creative professional dealing with AI disruption, a consultant, or just someone who is constantly developing better workflows at your daily job, you are generating intellectual property. You are creating immense value. The only question is whether you are recognizing it, formally protecting it, and leveraging it, or if you're simply letting your most valuable assets slip through your fingers and walk out the door.
It fundamentally changes how you look at your own work, doesn't it? You start seeing highly valuable assets literally everywhere you look.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the end of our deep dive today. But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on this whole idea of unidentified institutional knowledge.
It's a powerful thought exercise.
Think about your own daily life, your own career, or your own business right now. What is the single most valuable, unique system or framework you use every day? What is the specific process that gets you results faster and better than anyone else in your field? And most importantly, have you ever bothered to write it down? Have you ever claimed formal ownership of it? Or are you just giving your most valuable asset away for free every single time you use it? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep looking for the hidden assets in your life, and we will see you next time.